What if everyone around you is losing their mind and you're the only one awake?
Imagine opening your eyes tomorrow and realizing the world around you has gone insane. Not eccentric, not quirky, truly insane. People shouting slogans they don't understand, believing lies they've never questioned, and treating truth as if it were a crime. You glance around, wondering if you're the only one who still sees clearly, or if maybe you're the one who has lost touch with reality. That chilling uncertainty is the first taste of what psychologists call mass psychosis, a phenomenon where entire societies slip into a trance of fear, obedience, and illusion. History is littered with its victims, and today, it may be unfolding right before our eyes. What if I told you that this hidden force shapes your reality more than you realize, and that escaping it could change everything? Stay with me, subscribe to the channel, and let's uncover the truth together. Waking up in morning and stepping outside, only to realize that the world you once knew has transformed into something unrecognizable. People around you are not just different, they are irrational, blindly following patterns you can't comprehend, repeating slogans that make no sense, and reacting to events with a fury that seems untethered from logic. At first, you think it's a dream, a nightmare conjured by your imagination. But as the hours pass, the chilling truth settles in. This is reality. Every glance, every interaction, every headline seems to pulse with a hidden rhythm of obedience, hysteria, and unquestioned conformity. You begin to wonder if you've become the outsider, the observer of a society that has collectively lost its mind, or perhaps you are the only one still awake, seeing clearly while everyone else drifts deeper into illusion. This is not paranoia. This is the first stage of awakening. Pause and ask yourself, have you ever felt this way before? Have you ever looked at a news cycle, a social media thread, or even a room full of colleagues and sensed something deeply off, a pattern of irrationality that everyone else seems content to ignore? That unsettling feeling, that gnawing intuition, is your mind recognizing the undercurrents of mass psychosis at work. It's a force invisible yet omnipresent, subtle yet capable of reshaping entire societies. It feeds on fear, confusion, and the human need to belong. And yet, paradoxically, it leaves those who see clearly, feeling isolated, alienated, and frightened. You are about to step into a world where clarity is rare and insight is dangerous. As you journey through this exploration, you will come face to face with uncomfortable truths. Truths that challenge not just what you think about the world, but what you think about yourself. You will discover how ordinary humans, just like you and me, are capable of extraordinary conformity when the right psychological triggers align. You will see how fear, repetition, and social pressure can hijack perception, erode critical thinking, and manufacture obedience on a massive scale. And here is the most important part. This isn't merely an academic discussion. This is your map, your guide, your call to awareness. Understanding how mass psychosis functions is the first step toward reclaiming your mind, protecting your clarity, and standing firmly in your own truth, even when the crowd surrounds you with noise, pressure, and distraction. You are about to embark on a journey that could change the way you perceive reality forever. So stay with me, because what you are about to learn is not just fascinating, it is necessary. To understand why entire societies can slip into chaos, we first have to look beneath the surface of human behavior. Humans are not purely rational beings, no matter how much we like to believe in logic, science, or reason. Our minds are deeply wired for connection, for belonging, and for survival, and these instincts, while essential for life, make us vulnerable to manipulation. Throughout history, civilizations have crumbled, not because of external enemies, but because of collective illusions, shared fears, and a willingness to surrender critical thinking to the voices of authority. Philosophers, psychologists, and historians have long observed this pattern, warning us that humans are capable of extraordinary conformity when their sense of meaning or security is threatened. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, explained that when individuals are disconnected from their inner sense of purpose or identity, they unconsciously seek it in the herd. And the herd, unfortunately, is often guided by fear, propaganda, and a relentless need for belonging. What does this mean for you, the observer of the crowd? It means that the world's madness isn't random. It follows patterns that are predictable, measurable, and deeply psychological. You begin to notice it everywhere. In the slogans repeated without understanding, in the unquestioned consensus of groups, in the automatic rage triggered by anyone who challenges the dominant narrative. This is mass formation psychosis, a phenomenon where societies collectively abandon rationality in favor of hypnotic conformity, and the consequences are staggering. The French social psychologist Gustave Le Bon, writing over a century ago, observed that individuals in a crowd lose their personal responsibility. They act impulsively, emotionally, and as part of a unified entity rather than as thinking adults. When you look around today, you see this principle amplified across social media, news cycles, and cultural debates. Ordinary people become carriers of a psychological contagion, spreading hysteria, misinformation, and obedience at the speed of light. And the terrifying part is that those trapped within it don't believe they are wrong, they believe you are. This reversal, where the observer is labeled the deviant, is one of the most insidious aspects of collective delusion. History is filled with examples. Empires destroyed by paranoia, ideological movements fueled by emotion rather than reason, nations seduced by simple narratives that promised security, order, or justice. Yet, these collapses always begin quietly, in the shadows of everyday life, through small acts of conformity, the quiet suppression of doubt, and the subtle erosion of personal responsibility. You don't need a dictator to enslave a mind. You need fear, repetition, and the willingness to follow the herd. And once enough people give in, the system becomes self-reinforcing, a snowball rolling downhill, unstoppable unless individuals reclaim awareness and critical thinking. Recognizing these patterns is the first and most essential step toward freedom. You must see how fear and desire for acceptance manipulate perception, how collective illusions distort reality, and how ordinary people, just like you and me, can become instruments of mass hysteria. The key to breaking free isn't simply knowing the danger, it's understanding that the danger exists in the invisible spaces between thought, belief, and emotion, and that by observing it, you can step outside the hypnotic influence of the crowd. Awareness is not passive. It is a declaration of autonomy, the first act of courage in a world that has surrendered to its own illusions. Fear is the most potent weapon in the invisible arsenal of mass influence. It is subtle, insidious, and universal, touching the deepest corners of the human mind. From our earliest days, we learn to respond to threats real or imagined with instinctive caution. Our ancestors needed this alertness to survive in the wild. Lions, storms, and scarcity demanded it. Today, the threats may be less tangible, but the mechanism remains the same. Fear primes us to surrender critical thinking, to prioritize safety and belonging over truth, and to seek comfort in the opinions and actions of others. This is exactly how power manipulates the crowd. Those who understand this principle know that the most effective control does not come through chains or laws, but through the mind itself. Consider how history repeatedly demonstrates this pattern. Religious crusades, political revolutions, and economic panics We're all fueled not simply by ideology, but by a collective emotional current. Leaders, movements, and institutions recognize that when fear is present, logic is diminished. Ordinary people, acting as if under a hypnotic spell, surrender responsibility and defer to authority figures who promise clarity, safety, or salvation. Social conformity becomes a survival tactic. You may have noticed it in modern life as well. Headlines that provoke outrage, social media posts that spark panic, narratives that insist on a single villain or a single correct way to think. Fear is the engine, and the herd moves accordingly, almost unconsciously. Psychologists have observed this dynamic in experimental settings as well. The classic studies by Solomon Asch demonstrated how ordinary individuals would deny the evidence of their own senses in order to conform to the group. Imagine that multiplied by millions, amplified through modern media, and accelerated by the connectivity of the digital age. Fear spreads faster than facts, outrage travels faster than reason, and the collective mind becomes a vessel for manipulation. You are not immune, because fear is wired into your neural circuits. The challenge is recognizing when it is being used against you. The frightening paradox is that those who are fully immersed in this environment rarely recognize their own participation. They feel righteous, justified, and safe. Meanwhile, those who step outside the narrative, those who question, doubt, or challenge, are quickly labeled dangerous, heretical, or even insane. This inversion, where awareness is punished and blind obedience rewarded, reinforces the cycle of fear. It isolates the thinking individual and strengthens the power of the collective illusion. But here's the truth you must hold on to. Fear can be observed, understood, and resisted. By recognizing how it shapes your thoughts, reactions, and perceptions, you begin to reclaim your autonomy. You can witness the mechanisms of manipulation without becoming their instrument. You can feel fear without surrendering to it, question authority without being paralyzed, and choose clarity over conformity. Awareness is the antidote. And the moment you realize that fear is being used as a tool, you step out of the current and regain the power to navigate reality on your own terms, free from the hypnotic influence of the crowd. Stepping outside the hypnotic influence of the crowd is not a painless journey. Awakening carries a cost, and the first toll is often loneliness. When you begin to see clearly, when the patterns of manipulation, fear, and conformity reveal themselves, you realize that the majority of people around you are still asleep or unwilling to look. Suddenly, conversations feel hollow, debates become exercises in futility, and even close relationships can strain under the weight of your new perception. The isolation is subtle at first, a quiet sense of disconnection in meetings, at social gatherings, or scrolling through social media feeds. But gradually, the truth becomes undeniable. You are walking a path few dare to tread, and this path requires courage. History is filled with individuals who experienced this same isolation. Socrates questioned the consensus of Athens and paid with his life. Galileo faced ridicule and imprisonment for daring to challenge the dominant beliefs of his time. Carl Jung confronted not only society but also the depths of his own unconscious to uncover the truths hidden beneath the surface of collective thought. These pioneers endured doubt, fear, and opposition, yet they persisted because clarity demanded it. And this is precisely what awakening asks of you: to stand firm in truth, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it costs you acceptance, popularity, or comfort. Resistance is inevitable. The crowd, steeped in conformity, often reacts with hostility toward those who question the shared illusion. Logic, evidence, and reason become threats to their fragile sense of security. You may have already noticed this. When you calmly present a different perspective, the response is often anger, mockery, or dismissal. It is not your fault. The collective mind resists awakening because acknowledging truth threatens the safety of its constructed reality. Understanding this dynamic allows you to meet resistance without internalizing it. You are not failing. You are simply acting in a space where most have not yet learned to observe their own conditioning. Courage is the bridge between clarity and action. It is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to confront it. Every act of observation, every question you ask yourself, and every refusal to accept a narrative blindly is an exercise in mental sovereignty. Courage also requires patience. Awakening does not happen in a single moment. It is a gradual unfolding. The subtle insights, the quiet realizations, the moments when you notice the herd moving in automatic rhythm while you remain conscious, these are the victories of awareness. The price of awakening may feel steep, but the reward is immeasurable. Loneliness transforms into self-reliance. Resistance becomes a mirror reflecting your strength. Courage develops into a capacity to stand unshaken, no longer dependent on the approval of the crowd. And ultimately, this solitude and clarity allow you to perceive the world as it truly is, to act with purpose, and to inspire others not by force, but by embodying the possibility of conscious, independent thought. The journey is difficult, but the path leads to freedom. To break free from the hypnotic pull of mass psychosis, you must first understand how it unfolds. It begins subtly, like a fog rolling over the landscape of your mind, disorienting and unsettling. You notice a vague sense that something is wrong, yet you cannot pinpoint what it is. This stage of disorientation primes the mind for dependency on external cues, on the simplified narratives offered by leaders, media, or the majority. Anxiety rises, certainty fades, and the familiar frameworks that once guided your understanding begin to crumble. The world feels chaotic, and in this chaos, the mind seeks order, even if it comes at the expense of truth. The second stage is simplification. A narrative emerges that is neat, emotionally charged, and morally certain. It provides a clear villain, a clear solution, and a roadmap for behavior. Complexity and nuance are erased. Everything becomes black or white, good or evil, friend or enemy. The mind is soothed by certainty, yet this clarity is false, constructed to suppress doubt and critical thought. You may recognize it today in viral slogans, polarizing headlines, or social movements that reward compliance over understanding. People surrender their rational judgment, not out of stupidity, but out of exhaustion. Questioning becomes too tiring. The herd feels safe, and safety often overrides truth. Next comes conformity. This stage is subtle but powerful. People adopt the beliefs of the collective, not necessarily because they are convinced, but because they assume everyone else believes it. Fear of isolation, ridicule, or exclusion silences dissent. Pluralistic ignorance takes hold. The majority may privately disagree, but because no one speaks up, the illusion of consensus strengthens. Silence becomes complicity. At this point, the collective mind is nearly airtight. Questioning the narrative is socially risky and emotionally costly. Stage 4 is aggression. Once the collective belief solidifies, those who resist it are no longer merely different, they are threats. The crowd enforces norms with emotional, social, and sometimes physical pressure. Debate is curtailed, questioning is vilified, and dissenters are cast out or attacked. History repeats this pattern endlessly. Societies that suppress truth do not become peaceful. They become hostile to those who see clearly. Understanding this dynamic is critical for your own awakening. Recognize that resistance from the crowd is a sign that you are observing truth, not a sign of error. Finally comes awakening. This stage is often subtle at first, a quiet inner voice asking, "Is this really true?" As awareness spreads, cracks appear in the collective illusion. Cognitive dissonance emerges as people feel the tension between what they are told and what they experience. Awakening can be slow or sudden, but it is always challenging. The mind must reconcile the gap between illusion and reality, often confronting manipulation, deception, and self-delusion. Yet this stage is liberating. By anchoring your mind in purpose, meaning, or internal truth, you regain autonomy. You become immune to the hypnotic sway of fear, conformity, and obedience. You begin to reclaim your perception, your judgment, and your life. Understanding these stages is not merely intellectual. It is a lifeline. Awareness transforms confusion into clarity, powerlessness into sovereignty, and fear into disciplined observation. Recognizing the process of mass psychosis allows you to step aside from the current and reclaim the freedom that others have surrendered. The deepest escape from mass psychosis is not merely resisting the crowd, it is transcending the need for it altogether. True freedom begins when your sense of self is no longer dependent on approval, applause, or validation from others. The crowd wields power because most people live in reflection. Their identity is shaped by mirrors, by the reactions of friends, colleagues, and society at large. When you step outside this reflective dependency, you render fear powerless. No ridicule, no social pressure, no narrative can dictate your perception or shake your inner clarity. You stand alone, not in loneliness, but in sovereignty. And this is where the revolution of the mind begins. Transcendence requires presence, awareness, and courage. You must observe yourself with honesty, asking the uncomfortable questions. Why do I believe what I believe? Who benefits from my adherence? When was the last time I adjusted my thinking based on evidence rather than expectation? These questions are not academic exercises. They are the tools that excavate the conditioning, the subtle programming that keeps you tethered to collective illusion. As you cultivate this inner clarity, a profound transformation occurs. Fear loses its grip. Conformity becomes optional, and your mind becomes a lighthouse in a storm of confusion. The process is both painful and liberating. Waking up means confronting the shadows within, acknowledging the years spent echoing others' beliefs, and grieving the illusions you once held as truth. But grief is not defeat. It is the doorway to strength. In facing what you denied or overlooked, you reclaim your authenticity. The inner compass, long buried beneath noise, fear, and manipulation, reemerges. It points unwaveringly toward truth, anchored in your own observation rather than external expectation. From this point, you no longer chase approval. You act in alignment with reality as you perceive it, and in doing so, you become a living proof of another way. This transcendence radiates. Others will notice it, even if, unconsciously, they may be drawn to your coherence, or they may feel threatened by it. Yet it does not matter. Your liberation is not contingent upon them. You have become a stable center amidst the chaos, a mind unshakable, a presence unmanipulable. The awakened individual does not argue, lecture, or coerce. Their life itself becomes evidence that freedom, clarity, and conscious choice are possible. In this way, awakening spreads not through force, but resonance. Søren Kierkegaard said, "The crowd is untruth." He was not advocating isolation. He was illuminating the principle that truth begins within the individual soul, unmediated by external validation. When you internalize this, You realize that the greatest power lies not in controlling the crowd, but in mastering yourself. Your inner freedom is a fortress no collective hysteria can breach. It is here, in the unwavering presence of self-truth, that you find the ultimate key to escaping mass psychosis. Not rebellion, not resistance, but absolute, conscious, unshakable alignment with reality as you know it. This is the culmination of awakening, standing in clarity, walking alone if necessary, and living as proof that another path is possible. You have transcended the crowd. You are free.